Now I can assist mothers and my community to handle those premature so that they can grow and become big men and big women.
I am smart. I'm beautiful.
Welcome, Maddie and Pralhad. Thank you so much for joining us at our iEqualChange Impact webinar. It's such an honor to have you both here. Thank you for making time.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Pleasure to be here.
No, thank you. I'm not going to pretend I'm not particularly excited to have a conversation with the two of you, because I am. I am for a lot of reasons, right? Adara Development was one of our earliest partners, almost close to 10 years ago now, where Odette and I, your founder, had this conversation about how we could help raise funding for your work, and obviously our shared passion around helping to empower women and girls. I've also been to see your work, not yet to Uganda, but to Nepal, and Pralhad, it was wonderful to spend. This was all before COVID, of course, and none of us knew what was coming. And so it was great before the world shut down to have really had an opportunity to see some of your work. And I think it's worth touching on that today, learning about how COVID has rolled back a lot of the gains that you've made and were making, and how you're addressing that. Because, you know, for those people living in vulnerable, low resource communities, most people are not aware of, you know, how very narrow that threshold is, where people can very quickly fall back into levels of relative abject poverty. So This is really a conversation, an opportunity to learn from you and the incredible work that Adara has been doing now for many years. Maddie, perhaps if we start with you, if you could please share what Adara Development does.
Of course, yeah. Thanks, Jeremy, and thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be one of the first partners with iEqualChange, and it's been amazing to see the journey of the organisation. So, thank you for your long-term partnership. It's been amazing. Adara Development is an organization that sits within a bigger organization called the Adara Group. So I'll explain our really unique model in a moment. But Adara Development itself is an international development organization that has expertise in two main areas, and that is maternal newborn child health and very remote community development. This is our 25th year of operation this year, so lots of celebrating happening across the world. And over that time, we've built these kind of areas of expertise and really developed models of service that are impacting many, many people across the world. So for our maternal newborn child health work, if I could start there, we really focus on delivering high quality healthcare services to women, newborn and children at health facilities in the community and at home. And we do that in a lot of different ways, but particularly upskilling healthcare workers, equipping facilities, kind of strengthening the system as a whole, and it really striving for quality care to reduce preventable maternal and newborn deaths. So this has evolved into a model called Adara Newborn, and it's built on this 25 years of experience working in partnership with a hospital called Chwoko Hospital to develop this centre of excellence in Uganda. And so this model is now scaling across the country in Uganda with the goal to halve newborn deaths and stillbirths in 10 facilities across the country in the next 10 years. On the remote community development side, you're very lucky that we've got the expert himself on the call, Pralhad, today, and you'll hear a lot more from him about this work. Our work is primarily based in Nepal, really focused on strengthening local health services and making sure that we're ensuring all children have access to quality education from early childhood through to university studies. And this also has a really big focus on strengthening education as a tool to combat child trafficking. Pralhad will elaborate a bit more about that. And this is really, we deliver our work through deep service and then knowledge sharing. So making sure we take what we've learned, the mistakes, the amazing successes that we've had, and also sharing them with others so that they can learn and take that impact more widely. So that's kind of Adara Development in a nutshell.
Thanks, Maddie. And I think let's circle back to that unique model that you spoke of, because it is very inspiring, and it's one that I know a lot of NGOs hold to high esteem. I'd like to ask you, Pralhad, you're the country director in Nepal, and a lot of Australians go to Nepal and they trek and walk through villages. And I think it's fair to say largely not aware of the lived reality for families and for children especially, and sometimes the risks for girls that they could be trafficked. Could you share with us your background in this sector and what inspired you particularly to want to work with Adara Development?
My background, thanks for asking, Jeremy, and this is so nice to connect you again. You've been in the ground of Adara's work. You have seen our, work in what we do in the ground. So basically, my background is I'm in this development sector for the last 34 years, 35th year going on. So I worked with organizations like Red Cross, Save the Children, voluntary service overseas, and I'm here with Adara for last 16 years. So that's my background in short, and what inspired me to be with Adara for so long, and what inspired me to join Adara. Of course, first I got attracted. I always dreamed to work in Karnali. That's the most remote part of Nepal, and being Nepal, you can say this is the most remote part of the planet. So I always dreamed to work there, because the life there was like, you always felt like in a 16th century life. People living that kind of life where basic health service, education, food, everything is inaccessible for the people. And I always wanted to be a kind of contributing person, so that they can have their access to their basic rights like food, education, health. So that actually pulled me to Adara. Adara was working there when I knew Adara was actively working there, and that pulled me there. And of course, women and children. Adara always focused on women and children, and that's always my passion to work with for. And Adara had lots of projects that are so action oriented, so different. It's so action oriented. You all the projects are designed in the village, designed with the women, children, and people, key people in the community. They design project there, and then they are all action oriented project that pulled me towards Adara. And we always wanted to do like Adara's service excellence. Whatever Adara does, uh, do it in the good quality and the excellent, so that that's replicable, or you know that's a best example.
Pralhad, could you share just for our audience how remote is remote? I think you talk in terms of days walk from the nearest road. Could you just help paint that picture?
When I joined Adara, then even there was no road to Mugu or other neighboring district. So Humla is the only district in Karnali, a whole Nepal, which is still not connected with the national road system. That means really remote. So
How
if
many
you
days does
walk
it
to
take to get there?
Simikot from the road 8, if you walk there, then you definitely, now you walk at least week time from the road 8, from the Mugu. So when I go to my project area, then I normally walk for 14 days. So if you just go to the villages, just to make a round of the villages we work, it takes 14 days trek. And if you spend quality time with the people, then you have to spend your 4 weeks in Humla with the people. That's the remote. And then there is one remote, like we work, it's just 90 kilometers from Kathmandu. It takes uh, 6 hour drive from Kathmandu for 90 kilometers. And that's really remote. Actually, if you look at all the indicators like education, health, food, everything, that village is also equally like Homla. So that village is called Gangthiti in Nuagot, just neighboring district of Kathmandu, but so remote. And it's in a buffer zone of Langtang National Park. So again, like, it's not far away from the road, but the remote was really remote. And people are lacking a basic access to the basic services. So that's the two type of remote we work with.
And just to sort of help, thank you, Pralhad, so much, and to help paint the picture, knowing a little, having some understanding about the nature of Adara's work. I mean, most NGOs don't work in these remote areas because it is so remote. Is that correct to say? It's hard. You can't get there easily. You can't get supplies there easily. It's just hard. And therefore, these communities have been isolated from a lot of the opportunities to access that development work for many years. And so, but yet, you as a team have remained really courageously dedicated to these remote communities. And so I'm wondering, Maddie, if you could perhaps share with us also what makes Adara so unique in respect to its focus, its methodology, and overall theory of change.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeremy. And I think if I can come back to kind of this unique model that is the foundation of our organization. So I've told you a little bit about the NGO, but this is just one half of Adara. So our founder, Odette Excel, who you mentioned earlier, she established Adara 25 years ago with a really deep belief and passion that we could use the tools of business to affect change for people living in poverty on the other side of the planet, much like iEqualChange is doing with the amazing platform that you have. So the way that we do that is Adara was set up with two sides: this international NGO, Adara Development, and then some Adara businesses. We have two Adara businesses, one called Adara Advisors and one called Adara Partners. These businesses are businesses for purpose. They were set up with the sole purpose of generating profits to support the work of the NGO. So they operate in the financial services sector, and Adara Partners in particular, it has a panel structure. So 14 of Australia's leading bankers, lawyers, kind of corporate advisory experts sit on a panel, and they work for Adara on a pro bono basis. So they engage in mandates in mergers and acquisitions and different parts of corporate advisory services. And instead of taking home a big check at the end of it, the fees that are generated, all of the profits are donated across to fund the work of the NGO. So it's an incredible model that has really served our organisation in an amazing way. So to date, the Adara businesses themselves have donated about $24 million across to Adara Development, and that's growing every year. And from our other funders and supporters, we've been able to generate around $45 million since inception. The beauty of the model really is that the businesses can take on all of those core support, infrastructure, overhead costs that donors typically don't enjoy funding or want to fund. They want to send their money to the programs, and it allows then us to guarantee 100% of the donations that we receive go directly to support the amazing work that Pralhad's doing and the maternal newborn child health work that we're doing. So that's a really cool part of our organization that is very unique in the sector, and has really enabled us to kind of be contrarian at times, I think, as well, and take the path less traveled because we have this financial underpinning from our businesses. So yeah, that's one piece about the uniqueness of the organization. I think you've touched on some of the others. The remoteness is a part of it, going to rural and remote communities that are often underserved by both government services often, and also by other NGOs, trying to reach people who are excluded from services. I think I still remember during COVID, Pralhad, the journey to get some masks to remote Humla was, our team got in a Jeep and drove them to one part of Nepal. They got put on a tiny plane and flown to another part of Nepal, and then they were put on the back of a yak and taken up the hill to get to the community. And then the health workers walked them out to different villages. It's not an easy place to work often, but that kind of focus for us on making sure everyone has access to essential health and education services is really at the core of our organization. And I think there's so many things I think that make Adara unique, but I think another piece is really our focus on listening to community. We believe so strongly that we should be listening and not telling communities what they need. We really believe that they have the answers to their problems, and that we can work alongside them to help them achieve that. So we have all local teams on the ground. They're led by local, Nepal, local Nepali experts, in Uganda, local Ugandan experts. We work to have feedback loops constantly back to community to make sure we're learning from the programs, and we listen to them. So in Humla, we did a household level survey. We talked to 820 households, every single household in the villages we're working, to hear from them about what is happening, what changes they're seeing, where the needs are. So I think that's another really important piece of what makes Adara unique as well.
And thanks, Maddie. I'd just like to highlight that because it is such a fundamental tenet of best practice development, and I've seen it play out personally in visiting your work in Gangfedi and seeing the real care and respect and integrity with which Pralhad, yourself and others, and Odette at the time sat with the community, and that in sincere desire to, as you say, keep listening and learning and providing, helping them unlock the solutions which they know they need. Sometimes there just aren't the resources to do it, which you are then committed to finding to help support those communities. Pralhad, if I can just come back to you, I've climbed what felt like a big mountain for me. I think it was a little mountain for you. We did it together. Because you were laughing the whole time and I was almost crying, but we did it. and it was just so wonderful to see your connection to everyone, and joy in saying hello to the kids who were on their way to school. And it seems to me, I mean, this work obviously brings you alive. What are some of the unique challenges and joys about your work in Nepal, and perhaps that even things that you may not have experienced until you had the opportunity to work with Adara?
I think there are lots of challenges. As you just touched on the point that we work in a much remote part of the country. I mean, Nepal itself, the country itself is very remote, being in a Himalayan range of the planet, and in Nepal, I think it's a top out of top 10 highest mountain, 8 of them are in Nepal. So you can imagine the terrains and how remote it is. And we work in the most remote part district of this country. So this is how we work in a really remote areas, and that poses lots of challenges. Honestly, one is travel risk for the staff, and for myself, everybody. Like we have more than 85 people working with us directly, and then it has our travel risk is so high in in those areas, especially the plains, and also the walking trails are not so easy. So there is always a travel risk, and risk associated with that, challenges associated with that is the project cost is sometimes high, because you have to transport a bag of cement from the roadhead to the school, or to the to where you are building your greenhouse or microhydro. It takes a lot of effort and lots of money and lots of passion and lots of kind of risk as well. So that's the being remote travel and transportation challenge is there. And the village you talked about, we work in a village which is the epicenter of the girl trafficking, and this is not a simple thing. This is it has a huge a connection or nexus of the organized crime. Girl trafficking is kind of organized crime, and we are in the epicenter of that problem. And we're running a school, and we're working with 610 students, and many children, parents, and many teachers. So that also is a big challenge to deal with all those criminal nexus, and and navigate that, and also be able to retain girls in the school is a big challenge for us. And another thing, since we work in a high altitude, you can see the impact of climate change and global warming directly. Either you are in a flat land, in a sea level, or you are in a high altitude. The impact of global warming and climate change is so evident and so visible there. You can see crop failures. You can see yak now. Yak are slowly disappearing, which is a big concern. Like the range of the mountain where you could grow axe, now no more you can grow axe there. You have to go further uphill. So a lot of we were facing all these new challenges which we never expected 10 years ago, like climate change and global warming. So yes, they are the challenges, Jeremy. And if you see joys, then every day we work with the people, we interact with the people, and working directly with the people and seeing impact of your work on their life is really lots of joys. You see, like children coming from Gangfedi and being a health assistant in somewhere else in a better place. They are now professional health worker, a professional kind of teacher. They're doing law, they're pursuing law degree, and it makes you feel like, oh, wow, this is a kind of reward. Though you have lots of challenges, but the joys and the reward out of your work is awesome, and that that's really something.
I think Adara is a great example of how when you stand by someone in the long term, and you touch someone's life, you touch a whole community, and ultimately you touch a whole country. And I know some of the stories from rescuing children who were destined to be trafficked into India. Now these are young men and women who are thriving in their own right. Pralhad, I'm wondering if you could share, I'm curious, where your passion comes from to empower women and children. Was there one moment that changed your life that made you realize that this would be your path, or was it a series of moments that sort of have moved you onto this path where working as a leader in this field, where now you know this is the only work you would ever want to do?
Actually, it's all this comes from my my family and the community where I grew up. I've seen situation of the girls and women, especially in my family. My father had 4 wives. I mean, I'm very open about it. So I've seen the situation of the women and the girls, girls who born at the same time with me, my friends and my siblings. Those who are girls are still illiterate. They had never, they had no chance to go to the school and get, literate. So you can imagine the age, and they were early married. I myself is early married. I got married when I was 15. So that all those practices, and I've seen that, I faced that, I've seen that, I've seen my siblings, I've seen my friends who grew up with me, who are especially girls, and I'm still seeing their lives. They could have become like an international personality, but now they got married, had a children, and they look really old now. And that actually that still makes me feel I would say like a little bit of anger or agitated, that's not a fair, that's not a justice. So I've seen that in my life. That's the point, that's the key thing that makes that actually give me the kind of a kind of passion, or give me kind of drive in my life, that I have to work towards that. And I can whatever I can do to change this, I would do. So this is how I that makes me feel like those girls who grew up with me, being a son, they invested a little bit on me to educate me, and I did my master's degree. But what about the girls who born together with me, who played together with me? And thus that you really feel that. And then my passion for the children and the girls especially, and for women, and overall like isolated community. And I really would like to challenge that discrimination and injustice. And it's all about justice. I want to I want to spend whatever my life, whatever I could do in my life, to spend on bringing those injustice to the justice, bridge that discrimination, or bridge that gap.
Thank you, Pralhad. It's thank you for sharing that. Really, it's we all have a lot of work to do in this space, and it's just wonderful to hear from you around the real passion, and this is an example of what we've experienced over and over again. And I really want to make clear to the iEqualChange businesses, I mean, they are supporting some of the most extraordinary impact leaders who are experts in what they do, and there's a deep passion and commitment and expertise that gets deployed every day to really try to move the needle on what I think we're starting to learn today are complex and difficult challenges, especially the work you do working in these very remote communities. Maddie, I'm wondering if I could ask you to share a story, and I know you have so many stories across the 2 countries you work of, but perhaps of one person to show how life-changing and impactful the work that you do can be.
You're right, Jeremy. It's very hard to pick one, but there is a story that for me, I felt so proud working for Adara with this story. And I think it's also a testament to kind of what we've been talking about today, and that passion that Pralhad has for children and women, and how that's impacted community as well. So Pralhad's told you a little bit about Gangfedi. Jeremy, you've been to this community. It is the epicenter of child trafficking for the country. There are long held customs and traditions, and girls have historically not had a lot of rights in the community. And a big part of what Adara has been trying to do there is to empower children as well and help them understand their rights and give them the opportunity to learn and be educated. And a part of that is through this program called the Child Clubs. So we've set up child clubs in the schools, and the child clubs meet together. They learn about their rights. They plan activities to better their community. And there was a time in Gangfedi where one of their classmates, a little girl called Leela, they found out that her parents had decided she would not be returning to school, that she would get married to a much older man, which is illegal, but still is practiced in the community. And it was actually not the adults in the community, but these kids who Pralhad and our colleagues in Nepal had trained and taught them about their rights that put a stop to this child marriage. This child club, this group of young children marched up the hill to where this ceremony was going on, and they had a conversation with Leela's parents. Leela had in her ears these big gold earrings that were the dowry that the man's family had provided for the marriage, and the children removed the earrings and returned them to the man and said to Leela's family, she needs to be in school. She's too young to be married. And she did. She returned to school. And when I heard that story, I just was filled with such immense pride for the work that Adara does, and her entire future has changed. And this is, you hear all the statistics, but this is like a real person, and she's just one of so many. And as I said, it's just such a testament to Pralhad and his team and the way that they do their work and really not just talk about empowering children, but believe it and give kids these skills and empowerment. So yeah, that's just one story. I could give you many, Jeremy.
How old was Leela at the time?
Pralhad, how old was Leela? She was quite young.
She was, I think, below 14, around 14 at that time.
Yeah.
She was in grade 7.
Yeah.
And can you just extrapolate on the impact that on a girl's life when she gets married at that young? Because this is a practice that is not uncommon across South Asia. I've seen it play out in Bangladesh as well. A girl's development basically stops. She often doesn't go to school anymore. Could you speak to that a little further, Maddie?
Yeah, it has a huge impact on a girl's life, and we can see it in the data. The outcomes across pretty much all areas of well-being are worse. Maternal newborn health outcomes, often they get pregnant younger, have children before their bodies are ready to have children. This creates issues not only for the women, but for the babies. You see higher rates of preterm birth as well. Education essentially stops. They don't have the same opportunities to attend school, as Pralhad shared with so many of his childhood friends, when the girls' lives were not able to continue. They're often also more vulnerable to things like violence and gender-based violence and abuse. Oftentimes it's older men that they're marrying, and so kind of across the spectrum of well-being, these women are and girls are worse off when they get married as children.
So I know there aren't any silver bullets, but the best thing for a girl is to stay in school as long as she can. Correct?
That's right. There is no silver bullet, but the longer girls stay in education, the more likely the better all those outcomes are across the board. They tend to have children later. They tend to their children tend to be healthier. They tend to have better health outcomes for themselves and their family across the board. So if you look at all of those spectrums of well-being, they tend to be more empowered, have less vulnerability to gender-based violence. It's a better outcome to be in school.
Maddie, could you just touch on briefly Chiwoko, where we support another of your projects? It was one of the worst outcomes for maternal and infant health, and you have turned it into a centre of excellence. Could you just speak to the data of kind of what was the state of that community and the reality for women when you first started working there, and what are the outcomes for them now?
Yeah, I'd love to. So when Adara first started working in this area, it was about 10 years after a civil war had ended in the community. And Chiwoko was again kind of at the epicenter of this war it was called the Bush War in Uganda and the Luwera Triangle. And when we first started working there, we were seeing just so many women and babies die of preventable causes. We had nurses who were holding babies with jaundice. So if a baby has severe jaundice in Australia, they'd be put under a phototherapy lamp, a little blue light, until that they were able to be well. It needs UV light to treat, and these nurses would literally hold babies out in the sunlight trying to save their lives from jaundice, and we would see babies dying of very preventable issues. Um, and so Adara went about to establish a maternal and newborn. Well, at that point, I don't think our ambition was a centre of excellence, which is what it's become, but to establish a place where women could give birth safely in a well-equipped maternity ward with well-trained staff and neonatal intensive care. So these very sick and small babies who are born preterm or who are born too small or have an illness at birth, making sure they had somewhere to be treated. And at that time, it was quite maybe a contrarian or unpopular idea that you could deliver intensive care in a rural setting. Chiwoko is not in the city. It's a few hours from Kampala. It's in the bush. It's quite remote. And it was kind of thought that you couldn't deliver that level of intensive care to infants. But the outcomes speak for themselves now. We're 25 years in, and we've seen these huge changes in survival in the unit. So these are the sickest and smallest babies. We've seen for the smallest babies, survival rates going from around 30% to around 80% across the board. The survival rates jump from 77 to 86% in the unit. And Chiwoko has been named by the Ministry of Health in the country as a centre of excellence of newborn and maternal health for the entire country. And so Adara is taking that, as I said, to scale. And in our first Adara newborn site, Nakaseki Hospital, which is nearby, we now have a 99% survival rate for babies admitted to intensive care at that facility. So we're incredibly proud of that work as well.
I think for a lot of our listeners, I mean, I know I was shocked when I started to learn the lived reality for women giving birth in very low resource settings and the risk for their life, where a small complication can take their life, where otherwise, if they were able to access even a basic supervised birth with a midwife who has trained and has access to knowledge and some clean instruments, her life could be saved. I just got back from Papua New Guinea, which is one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and it's just extraordinary how women suffer and struggle and often lose their lives or the lives of their baby and that's what's so heartbreaking, because these are small interventions that can save their life. It's not generally not complicated. You just need someone there who knows what they're doing, who has some basic equipment, and ultimately to empower these communities and to set up these centres that have become centres of excellence over time due to the quality of your work. It does need funding. And I mean, over the years that we've been able to work with you, we've already raised over $219,000 for Adara. Could you just speak briefly about what impact does funding like this create for the organisation and the people that you serve?
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. And firstly, just thank you seriously from the bottom of our hearts for all the incredible support from iEqualChange in the past 10 years. I think this is helping us to bridge that world that we talked about at the beginning, bridging the world of business with the world of people in poverty and having a really huge impact. So your contributions have helped us with two of our projects, one around preventing trafficking through education, which we've talked a bit about already, and the second to help these tiny babies survive in Uganda. And the impact is just immense. So I think if we look at the access to remote education and the preventing trafficking, our recent Humla household survey, which, as I said, I think it was 99.2% of households we talked to, we have, 99.2% of the households that we talked to, which was all of them, their students are regularly attending school, and compared to the rest of the country, it's about 74% of students in the rest of the country attending school. So nearly every student in this community is in school. When we started working in these communities, we were in one school. We're now in 18 schools. We've been able to increase enrollments in that time from 3 students to almost 2,000 students. So the funds that we receive from organizations like iEqualChange help us to kind of have these impacts. Also, I guess on gender equality, we're seeing now in these schools 54% of students are girls, and this was absolutely unheard of when we started. As Pralhad said, girls are often denied the opportunity for education. So these girls are being protected from trafficking because they're in schools, they're receiving an education, and we're able to kind of monitor their well-being as well. And then if we look at the babies, as I said, those survival impacts that we've been able to achieve are only possible because of our partners, and to be able to scale that work now to 10 more facilities and to try and our goal is to reach 500,000 mothers and babies and save 7,000 lives over the 10 years of the Adara Newborn program. We cannot do that without the support of iEqualChange and other partners. So we're just incredibly grateful and wanted to extend our thanks to you and to the amazing businesses on your platform who are so generously giving to make this work possible.
I think we're entering a both uniquely challenging and also exciting time where businesses of all kinds are looking to build a deeper purpose into their operations, into their brand, into their communications. And so I sometimes I borrow your catchphrase, which is effectively bridging worlds. For us, it's equally or similarly bridging worlds with businesses, and I hope that everyone on this call today really gets a really meaningful insight into the extraordinary expertise and passion and commitment that Maddie, Pralhad, and the team have. Pralhad, I've also noticed, again, having had the opportunity to visit your work in the field, just how complex and challenging. You're all you're in meetings and you're up the mountain, then you're down, you're talking to communities, and that might just be in one day. What keeps you going? What do you most look forward to each day, and what inspires you to stay on this path?
I think I'll give you exactly the analogy of your walking. It's like a walking in the mountain. Like what keeps us going, not only me, my whole Adara family going, is that it's like a climbing in the mountain. If it is a flat land, everything is visible. You can see like that. But if you climb in the mountain, you climb a little further. You climb 1 kilometer, you see something else. The scenery is different, avenues is different, challenges are different, need are different. Everything is, you see things while you climb. More you climb, more you see, and that keeps us going. Actually, we used to work. A longevity of Adara work is like we don't just go and do our project for 3 years and then run away from the village. It's not our model. So our model is longevity. We try to work with the people till the point that you feel like, and if you touch a life of a children, at least 10 years, it takes 10 years for a child to be skillful or get educated at least some level, and then get employed after that. So what keeps us going is that that those new challenges, new opportunities. For example, in Humla, we used to work in some village. Now we climb a little bit, and we saw that there is another village called Shanda Santa Yangu, and there's a whole lot of challenges there. From drinking water to education to child trafficking to everything is there. And then now our whole team is there, and we see everything. Oh my gosh, everything is now in the bottom. This village was like that 12 years ago. Now this village is like this. So now we started getting engaged with the people and talking to planning for their their need, and everything coming new is a challenge. And then we're trying to actually learn and do things. Even from Uganda, you simply say like we have a maternal child health best projects in Uganda, and then we're trying to adopt that a little tiny bit in Humla, where we are trying to develop a remote high altitude, a quality birthing center out of the learning from Uganda. So this is how every day is a learning, adapting, changing, new village, new project, new thought, and that keeps us going. And of course, our connection with the people, like why I am here in Adara for 16 years is it's a bond with the people, bond with the community, a bond with the I would say nature as well, nature of homeland, nature of camping, a huge bond with the nature, people, and the community. That keeps us going, that keeps us motivated, and that makes us feel like we should not stop.
And Pralhad, having had the opportunity to spend several hours in a jeep with you coming back from Gangfedi, I know you can be quite philosophical as well, and we had some good chats. And I'm wondering, therefore, when you look back on your professional life, many years from now, what do you believe you will be most proud of?
I have lots of examples, but I would go like generally. What I'm proud of is that we do work in a very remote, isolated, hidden areas, like in Humla, like right there in the Tibetan border. We work there. There is no media, no limelight, nothing. And sometimes what makes me feel really like proud is that we work in such an isolated corner of the country where Tibetan border, but our work talks louder than anything else. And our work is very evident for the ministry in Kathmandu, and they reward us for our project. And that it's a reward is not my kind of motivation. Okay, the reward is not something I'm motivated for, but the systematic change. They think like the civil society organization, NGOs are highly criticized in this world, but when they see work like in the Elbangi school in right there in the Tibetan corner Adara doing, they think like, oh no, there are, they give example like no, there is an organization like this who does this kind of work. Believe they themselves they talk about our work. And I always say like the work, your quality of your work talks louder than any media or any limelight sometimes. And that has a systematic impact on the system that changes system, that changes policy, that changes the modality, that changes the thought, and that changes the belief as well. So that's kind of things I'm not being philosophical, but I'm simply saying like that makes you feel like yes, our work in the corner, our work in the isolated part is making impact in the system. That makes me feel proud, actually.
We're often asked, how do you choose your NGO partners? And I often say, well, talk to Adara, look at Adara's work. And I believe this call today, this opportunity to bring to life the people behind the work and hear what you have shared with us makes that very clear, abundantly clear. What does best practice development look like? Maddie, I'd just like to, and I'm aware of time, just to touch on the nature of partnerships, because Adara is really extraordinary in terms of the breadth of your partnerships and how that ultimately unlocks growth for the work on the ground, but using the power of business. Could you perhaps give us just a brief example of how powerful partnerships are to achieving Adara's goals?
Yeah, of course, partnerships are critical. I think they're the heart of our organization. We're a business or two businesses partnered with an NGO. We have incredible partnerships with our funders and our supporters like iEqualChange. We build partnerships with local NGOs on the ground, with government as well as a really critical partner for us. A part of our development philosophy is we don't accept money from or give money to governments, but we're very focused on making sure we're not interrupting the systems and instead are strengthening the government systems that exist on the ground. So partnership with government is really critical, but none of this work is possible on our own. So I think, it's just foundational to who we are as an organization.
And how can iEqualChange businesses continue to help?
I think, well, firstly, as I know I've said this a few times, but we're just filled with gratitude for what they've already done. But I encourage them to keep doing what they're doing, and having that spirit of generosity and recognizing too, I guess, the benefits that we know exist for businesses that have a purpose and a social good as part of their DNA. So we would love to see the businesses continue to share the impact that we're having together as well, that they're helping to impact and save newborn lives or prevent trafficking. They're part of this important story, and this work is enabled by them. I think by working together, we can really kind of spread that awareness of Adara and accelerate the impact that we're having for people in the world's most remote communities. As our work scales, we're just really lucky to have partners like iEqualChange and the amazing iEqualChange businesses that work with them. And we're always looking for more. So if there are other businesses on the call who want to join, we'd love to welcome you. So thank you.
Thank you both, Maddie and Pralhad. And just before we open it up briefly for questions, a quick announcement around the nature of those partnerships. So we have tweaked our technology so that currently we work with retailers. So if there's anyone on the call who's a retailer, that's an easy one to come on board and support Adara's extraordinary work in either Nepal and or Uganda. But also it's now possible for law firms, insurance companies, accountants, any professional service to also give back through their operations. And so if you'd like to learn more, please reach out to us and we can share the details about how that works. Are there any questions from anyone? Has growth and scale always been a focus for Adara, or is this a new part of your strategy? Thank you.
It's a great question. I think Adara's philosophy has always really been at the heart about being 100 miles deep. We want the work that we do to be really quality work. And as Pralhad said, our model is built on longevity. We don't flit in and out of communities. We're there for the long haul to experience change. But we have always had at our heart this desire to share what we've done and the impact that we're having as widely as we can. So part of that is a scale of our operations, adding more villages, as Pralhad said, growing the scaling our newborn work to 10 more facilities, but it's also through knowledge sharing. So an example of that is, we've developed a program to follow up babies after they're discharged from intensive care, and it's been a huge success. But now we've created a package that other organizations can take if they want to implement the same package. So we think about scale in a lot of different ways, but it's kind of a part of the strategy that we're pursuing.
Any other questions? Can you highlight some of the key lessons or insights you have learned while working with Adara Development? Pralhad, would you perhaps like to answer that?
So I think lots of lessons, both from mistakes, blunders, or success, I would say. So we have all those mixture of lessons. And, I can give you an example, like, greenhouse. Earlier we thought, like, Nepal is a so collective society. If we build a greenhouse for 10 households, and greenhouse, we mainly produce vegetable, like leafy vegetables, right? So we built a greenhouse together with the community for 10 households, and later within 3 months we started seeing fights. Within, they were living so hard, in a harmony, very well together. When we installed greenhouse for 10 households, there was a conflict. Who to work, who to harvest. So we created a conflict, and suddenly we realized, no, this is not the approach. Actually, we damaging with our work. That's our blunder or mistakes. We changed our approach, and we said, no, this collective greenhouse or collective solar system does not work. We have to, though our community, our people, our culture is so collective culture, but despite that, these systems, it doesn't work collectively. Then we learned and we changed. We learned from our mistake. Now we went and just giving one example of greenhouse or solar system. But yes, we have lots of lessons, from our mistakes, and lots of mistakes, lots of success. Lots of celebration, lots of learnings.
Thank you, Pralhad, and thank you, Maddie, so much for your time. And I'd just like to I guess wrap this with a point around. I mean, we saw during COVID a lot of our business partners wanting to shift their focus to support Australian-based NGOs that are working within Australia, and we understood that. And there is undeniably a lot of need in Australia. Just to make it clear, the work that Adara teams are doing in Uganda and Nepal, you can get a sense today, I believe, in how very far the dollars go, how very far the impact can be made on the lives, given that the economies of scale are very different in these parts of the world. And so I think just to, if I may add a little philosophical note myself, I mean, we could all have been born in a different time and place, right? And for those of us in Australia, there's largely a lot of privilege that have been given to us, not by our own choice, but by simply the place and time of our birth. And we could have just as easily been a little girl born in a mountain community in remote Nepal, and we would be thanking the Adara team at this point. I know I would if I was that girl, because I would probably be in school because of the work that you're doing. And so it's I'd like to just highlight that, incredible international development, and you as a team are on the ground, you're working locally and deeply committed to and this is a human rights issue as well, the ability to access education, the ability to access a safe birth. These are things that in Australia we almost always take for granted, right, as a right. But in many countries in the world, this is something that is hard earned and hard fought for. And this is what you are fighting for every day in Nepal and Uganda. Once again, thank you so much for your time. We've got a little bit over time, but it's been such a rich conversation. Maddie and Pralhad, thank you again. And we look forward to supporting you for many, many years to come.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, iChange and your network, everybody.